All righty. Well, good evening, everybody. This is the very first session for discussing rules and regulations under the 28 SRA. This is a really kind of a first run opportunity to see how this works. But the goal for 28 SRA is to create and maintain a catalog of classes, not to dictate the classes that get run, but to create and maintain a catalog of classes that they can then be run at tracks all around the world. Really, we're not just building classes for the United States or one state. We're building classes literally for around the world that can be just pulled off the shelf and run. The goal for us all is to tonight is to take a look at what we have currently, which is the Rocky Mountain Spec class, which is in two parts, a spec and expert, and to take a look at that. And as I did a few weeks ago, we asked everybody online if the SRA should have a more traditional box stock class, and the resounding answer was yes, by a huge vote margin, that they thought that we ought to have a more traditional box stock class. So that's the discussion tonight, and just ask everybody on the panel just to give your input, and participate, and give your opinions. That's why you're here. You're all involved with the track in some way or another, and your opinions are valuable. You're seeing what people are running every day, and you're also seeing what people are using every day. And the other part too, of course, is that tracks are businesses, and we're looking to create classes that work for as many people as possible. So that's all I'm going to ask everybody tonight as we go through this, is just keep thinking very broadly, not personally. This is what we're building for everybody else, not just for one person. So just keep your minds open to what is very, very broad. Could we just take a second and introduce ourselves? I'll start real quick. So just get ready to unmute your microphones and get ready. But my name is Danny Sanchez. I'm in North Carolina. I am the founder and owner of Silver Horse RC. And I am currently the chairman of the 28 SRA, and I'm so happy we got the experts that we have with us tonight. And I'll just let everybody, whoever wants to go next.
I'll go next real quick. Yeah, and don't forget, Danny, you're also the race director at our local hobby shop, RC
And
Hobbies.
that's true too. I am race director.
The primary race director.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm his backup when he's not there. Brian Swaney. I started up what actually originated as the Fuquay 500 here in North Carolina, but it's now morphed into the Carolina Mini Z Cup, which Danny is also an integral part of, along with other people local here. So unfortunately, we only had one this year. We typically try to have two or three, but it's a big race that we put on here because really for us, it's there's not a lot of close shops that have big tracks. So anyways, Brian Sway, also a team driver for Silver Horse RC and MWX.
Very cool. Thanks for being here.
All right. I'm Enzo Grasso, owner of Parkland Hobbies in PA, Pottstown, PA. That's about it.
Yep. Awesome track in Park Lane.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Boyce, Jersey RC Racing Promotion in New Jersey. Same thing. Race director, hobby shop owner.
Yep. He's got a fantastic facility there, and Brian and I need to get up there too.
Oh,
Bill?
Yeah, I'm Bill Crotty. I'm represented a few of the New Hampshire tracks. Right now it is the Fremont track, then Peterborough, and then soon to be opened up Maximus RC over in Seabrook, New Hampshire. So that'll be fun.
Awesome. Very cool. Jason, you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. Jason Sanchez from Las Vegas. I represent the Las Vegas Mini Z Underground group here in Vegas.
Boom. All right. So we got a great crowd here tonight. So let's just get started into. We're going to try and keep this to an hour as we scheduled. I respect all your time. We finished a little bit earlier, great, but I won't hold everybody here until midnight. unless you really, really want to keep talking that long. We'll try to get done on time, or at least I'll try and keep us going. Okay, so just first off, we did ask a question online about having a more traditional box stock class. Before we get into the little details, any comments, any opinions on having a more traditional box stock class, switching out from the RM spec class? Any comments on that? So, up to date.
Did I say something about that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, I to be honest with you, I wasn't too crazy about the Giorama body for that box stock class. I feel that the box stock class should have the traditional white bodies and GT bodies that the cars come with. So that was one of the things that I would change.
Well, I'll put a little. We'll get down to talking about the bodies. So please remember to let's have that conversation when we get to the bodies. But that's a good point, or something at least to talk about. So there's a number of things that if we switch over to a traditional box stock, there's a number of things that are gonna switch. But we are splitting out basically the items between what they call a spec and an expert. And the main thing between spec and expert is the radio. So what we're looking at in a traditional box stock class is back to the KT radio and no others, right? So that's the class that we are talking about. So let's jump in. Let's jump in with actually the biggest changes to the group and the one that most people want the most, which is the chassis. So currently in the RM28 spec, the Kyosho MR03, the rear wheel drive, it's actually just the MR03 is listed in the 3S, the 352 or 3S2 and the MR03 rear wheel drive are the only ones listed. There are other chassis, especially out now. So the ones we know about are the MR04 and the SR27. So anybody want to lead off that conversation about adding those to the rule set? Okay, can you answer that question again, Bill? I just hit record.
Has there been any testing with the SR27 on, whether or not will keep up with the 03 or the 04?
There has. Yeah, there has.
Okay.
Before I talk about what we found out, did anybody else do any testing with it?
Nope.
No?
We did some in Vegas, not super competitive with the 28 SRA spec right now. But our track is really low on grip. We're not high grip, but I don't know if that affected it at all. But they weren't super competitive in our group.
So we did Brian and I did a test at our local track, which is a small track, medium grip. And what we did is the best way we thought would be to do some testing was a blind test. So Brian was putting the lids on the cars and handing me the remote without knowing what car was under the lid. And I was running 30, 40 laps per car and just getting kind of the results of how they felt and the fastest laps that we could do with the cars. So it was a blind test, which I think is important when you're doing any kind of testing, that you don't know what's in the car if you want to
Did
get
you
the
change?
results.
Did you change the transmitters?
Well,
How
I was actually just gonna clarify that real quick. That was the only one you can't do a blind test with
Yeah,
because
how would you do that?
because you pretty much know what you're getting when you get a hold of that transmitter.
Well,
So-
and I apologize not being specific. So we did a blind test between the MR03 and MR04, and then that one, yeah, you're right. We couldn't do completely blind, but we were doing the MR03 and the MR4 blind, and then testing that one also. So between the MR03 and the MR04, there was almost no difference. The MR03 was faster by a fraction of a second.
I think the average was 1/10. The MR03 was faster than the MR04, but that was out of about 30, 40 lap test.
Right. And then the SR27, if I remember right, was not that far behind.
It was about, I think the average was about 3 or 4/10 behind the MR04.
Yeah.
So while it's not going to blow the doors off of anything, but it is capable of keeping up.
Okay.
Especially put in the right hands. You may have a bad driver with an MR03 and a good driver with a SR27, and SR27 may do it, but
As long as it's not hands down better than everything, then everybody has to switch over, or any one of these. As long as they're pretty close,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
it should be
and
fine.
it's up to the person to pick their poison, right? So
Yep.
if you want to run SR27 because that's what you got, hey, you can. But not to say that I'm the best box stock driver, but I was able to keep it within half a second as to some of the better performing cars. So like Brian says, just depends on who's driving it.
Mm.
It actually did pretty good on a small track anyway. It did pretty good. Maybe on a big track there's a bigger gap, but there's certainly no reason to not allow it in to the rule set unless somebody disagrees. The other thing that the chassis are not specifically saying here is, and although not too many people are still running an MRO1 or an MRO2, they're not usually excluded from the rule sets. Any reason anybody would not want to add an MRO1 or an MRO2 to the rule set?
No, I think this should be fine.
If you want to get vintage, I
Is
say
there
go for it.
Absolutely.
I still
Okay.
have mine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know you got a
I
few
still
of
have
them.
both of mine. I have a mod and a box stock MRO1.
Okay, so it looks like we're all in agreement. We add to the current rule set the MRO4, the SR27, MRO1, and MRO2 because it's kind of a given that the older versions of the MR are included. So it looks like we're all in agreement with that. Fantastic.
You might as well put the MR015 on there as well if you really want to just cover all the Kyosho bases.
You're just flexing now that you know like chassis
I'm,
that I don't know.
well, I'm,
Mm.
I'm just saying it was sort of the interim between '01 and '02. So
All right. And then wheelbase, I don't think we're making any changes with that proposed changes. We're still showing 90, 94, 98, and 102 as far as the box stock class goes. Okay, the motor. Motor is probably one of the biggest changes. So under the current RM28, the PN70 turn is allowed in both the expert and non-expert classes. I can understand why they added it. I'm guessing why they added it is because it takes away the white motor question marks of who's modifying the motor or not modifying the motor because you run a PN70. But the reality is you can modify the heck out of a PN70 just as much as you can as a white motor. And actually you can't tell as much as a white motor if you modify PN70. But I think that was one of the reasons why they did it.
I can tell you why they did it. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm local to the rule set
Okay.
originations, right? So the original reason was accessibility to being able to get replacement motors. And because a lot of the Kyosho stock motors vary greatly in their performance, even if whether you break them in through a water break-in method or otherwise, they varied pretty greatly in their performance, whereas the PNs are a lot more consistent in their performance. And just as a side note, I know I'm not technically part of the panel, but I wanted to chime in because I have that knowledge. With the new SR27s, I think it's a good idea to keep the PN on as a swap out part so that people can run the PN in the SR27 or the new associated car, because then it creates a much more homogenized motor that everybody can run versus having manufacturer specific motors from Kyosho versus Team Associated. That would be a reason I would want to keep that motor on as an option motor. I understand it's not box stock at that point anymore, but
Right. It's not box stock
Right.
anymore. Right.
but if you're allowing other brands, you're really changing what box stock is.
Well, everything's a discussion item.
Right.
This is why we're having this meeting to discuss such things. The PN70 doesn't exactly fit right into the plastic motor pods from Kyosho either. So you're really doing a lot of modifications to shoehorn it in. But this is why we're having the discussion. So let's talk about it. What other opinions are about it?
yeah, my opinion is taking the PN70 out. Just because some of our local classes and stuff too. You can always. What was that?
How's your boy doing?
I think somebody's unmuted, but anyway, so in my opinion, it's taking the PN70 out, and I'd also heard that about the white motor for Kyosho for a little while there. I think it was hard to get, Seems like everything's back in stock. And of course, they've got the MRO 4 watt motor and stuff now too. But yeah, they also seem to be a little bit more consistent than what they used to. I used to spend 3 and 4 hours water breaking in motors, and I don't even bother doing that anymore because they all seem like they come off the shelf pretty well. I mean, in fact, Danny already knows the story, but because he was part of it, we went up to the PN regionals last year, well, year before last, and I had a motor I decided just to take out of a pack and use, and he had a motor that I'd spent 3 or 4 hours breaking in. We were no different on the straightaway. So, the watt motors and stuff. I mean, honestly, I think the quality's gotten a little bit better over the years, but the PN70, I feel like it's at that point it does get it out from box stock. And to me, one of the biggest things too is the fact that you just said, Danny, you got to like flare out the motor spacers and stuff in order to be able to get that PN70 in there. It's not a drop in. And I haven't even tried changing the motor on the SR27. I don't know if it would fit. So
What substitute motor are you going to have if you're going to take the 70 out?
just take it out.
Yeah, the problem is though, you're going to have a problem getting those motors because the reason why we changed them before even the SRA is because we couldn't get the motors even before the pandemic or after the pandemic. It didn't matter. So what would happen was our box stock when we started was the biggest class. That's what we ran was box stock. So what happened was it crippled us because we couldn't get any motors. So we had no choice. The other thing too on those white motors, you could manipulate those motors. You could take them apart. I've seen people do a lot of things with them where they're a lot faster than the 70 turn. Not long term, short term, but they're much faster, and you can't tell they took them apart.
And you can do the same thing with the PN70.
The PN70, at least you can see the brushes. If you kind of look in there, I mean, the can is open.
Well,
But there has to be some kind of substitute motor. I agree with you. I don't think it's the 70 turn is the answer, but there has to be a substitute. You can't just have one motor, and if you can't get that motor, what do you do?
I think
I would
lot
say
of
what's the supply chain like right now for those motors?
Kyosho's always been, I mean, even to now, their stock is horrible. It's very difficult to get stuff. It comes in like in batches and then they disappear and then you don't get them for a while. Even with the box stock cars, same
And
thing.
on that note, that's a big reason why a lot of the Rocky Mountain spec rules are the way they are for replacement parts. When it's a non-performance upgrade, but it's a stock replacement part and it's an equivalent like aluminum knuckles or things of that nature, they're there because you can't get the original stuff a lot of times, or there's supply chain issues, or people don't like, we found a lot of new people not liking to replace with the exact same part every time when it's just a stock part that's going to break again, especially when it comes to suspension components like aluminum knuckles or whatnot. So that's a big reason why, is because our local guys were wanting to be able to replace equivalent parts with an option that didn't feel like a waste. And again, being able to get them, that was another thing. Getting the Kyosho stock stuff was difficult and sometimes still is.
Right. The aluminum knuckles, as long as they're 0 degrees, they're basically a durability part. It's not a performance part.
Correct.
And most of the guys, like going back a few years, they would break knuckles. They some people would break them a lot. Some people won't break them at all because the hard bodies really protects the car. And I was kind of scratching my head like, how you guys breaking these knuckles when the hard bodies protecting everything?
They're new. You got to remember, they're new people, and sometimes they'll put on a lot of people are changing out their wheels. They'll put on high offset wheels that are sticking out a little bit, and they're hitting the track. It's breaking knuckles. So I mean, again, a big part of the Rocky Mountain spec was allowing for durability upgrades that were non-performance upgrades. It also encourages people to work on their cars because guys want to do upgrades, but people don't necessarily like replacing nothing with nothing. They want to upgrade, but as long as it's not a performance upgrade, it shouldn't matter. A durability upgrade is a good thing.
And newcomers like to do upgrades because the first thing they ask me is like, hey, can we upgrade the car? I'm like, yeah, because they like the wheels. They're new, so that's what they like.
And your box stock class should be the most approachable and most encouraging for new people.
So just to keep in mind as we go through this, all good discussion. It was great getting this kind of discussion so far. But just keep in mind that this is not the only class. This is box stock is just one class of many. So, offering other classes, a next level spec class that allows you to do more upgrading, um, or something different, not off the table. We're just talking about the box stock class. Um, we do want to try if we can come to some agreements. We don't want a box stock class that deviates so far from what's currently out there in box stock. That's why the PN70 may or may not be a great option. Not saying that it is or it isn't, but having something that's so unusual in a box stock class that's different than what everybody else is running, those are the questions that we're working through right now. So no, there's no right or wrong answer. Just working through the different components.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
the supply chain issue is a big deal with the motors. I get that.
yeah. I'm not opposed to what Brian's saying. I believe me, I'm 100% behind him. But at the end of the day, we need to have a replacement if we can't get those motors. That's
So
just the bottom line.
what would be an
Well,
option then?
maybe that's where you revisit it or have a contingency plan or something like that.
Another thing to keep in mind with this also, by the way, is the 28 SRA may have this rule set, but it doesn't prevent a track from running a club rule. Like if you run out of motors and you can't get any more, hey, you can always just say, well, let's all run PN70s for now until we get something else. There's no
Right.
there's no laws with this. This is all guidelines trying to create classes for people to run. So
Right.
there's no stopping anybody from changing the rule set along the way to
Right.
accommodate for things
And the
that
other thing
might
with
happen.
the easy decision on that 70 was the cost too. It's not a high cost motor. It's very cheap. So it's basically a nice performance upgrade for the money. We tried the XO1 motors. Those things were ballistic. They were too fast. They were blowing boards up. Those were all the cheap motors. So we tried a bunch of different ones. But the 70 turn was what we came up with, for the cost and for availability as well.
I've always viewed the box stock as an entry level class, right? Buy it, put it on the track, add some tires, and you're running. And I think that's one of the things now when we get new members to our club, they go out, they buy a box stock car, and then they've got to buy a bunch of parts to put on it to be what they think is competitive with the RM spec. Now the reality of it is they're not always competitive because they're newer drivers. But I think that's one of the advantages of the box stock and the white can is you buy it, you put set of tires on it, you put it on the track, and you're off and running, and you're not doing a bunch of upgrades. And I think if we offer that in addition to like the RM spec, where there are some upgrades, I think that helps separate it and at least get some new people putting cars down that normally they wouldn't when they look at the cost of what they have to have, right?
So I have a question about the low motor, which is the LM versus the mid motor. Now, obviously, everybody knows the LM's a better performing chassis and car, right? So when we started, we used to have a separate class. I'm not saying that's the answer. I think that'll water down the box stock class. But I mean, what do you guys? What are your thoughts on that? Like as far as the LM versus mid motor in the same class.
Well, the 102, the wheelbase gives you a little bit more. It's a little more forgiving, possibly. The thing is, as far as motor position, if you look at the fact that the motor's flat on the chassis, the MR04 actually comes with in 98 form with that same type of thing. The motor's flat. It's because we used to whenever the rules allowed, we'd take an LM pod and put on a 98, and then that way it gave you that low literally the low motor. So, but the MR04 is coming like that as well. So,
Okay.
but it's
I
a
think
98.
the performance difference between all the cars are going to very slightly, obviously, especially if you're introducing the associated car. I think the important thing to keep in mind with with box stock, Rocky Mountain spec, whatever your entry level class is approachability and comfort of the new drivers and making a new person feel like they want to be able to run this hobby. Because a lot of the guys don't even run other stuff. Maybe it's their first foray into RC in general. And so just making them comfortable with that is fine. I think caring about the difference between an MM and an LM as far as performance is concerned should be kind of the least of the worries for the class, because it's such a minor difference and they're new drivers. Most of them are new drivers, right? So it's going to come down to driver skill more than anything. And again, especially if you're including other brands, you change everything when you include the associated car. And I agree, we should include the associated car. I think it's important. I like options as long as it's equal and not greater than. But a lot changes just from a perspective of it's a totally different brand. There is going to be performance differences. But again, that shouldn't be the focus, right? The focus should be not necessarily on the 1% performance increase that an LM has. And you don't, again, you don't want to.
I wouldn't say it's a 1% though. That it's way more than a 1%
for a good driver.
When you're talking dampening,
right?
When you're talking dampening, it is literally hands down 3 to 4 times faster. I mean, you can't say it's not.
Well, here, I understand what Ken's saying. If you're gonna base it on what's going on now, that you have really good drivers and entry-level drivers, is going to be a huge advantage. But if you're going to put another class in like a pro class, then that's different. So now
I agree there.
I agree with Ken that, you know, the MM and LM is not going to make any difference for a newcomer. But as it is now, it's going to make a huge difference, because if I was going to a box stock class, I'd choose the LM all day long.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, and so like you said, having both a true box stock and then a pro class or expert class may be the answer. And again, clubs are going to be able to run what they want locally anyway, whatever fits their people. So again, you just want to make sure your approachability doesn't go out the window.
And just as a preview, again, we are just talking about the box stock class tonight, but as a preview, we're still wanting to have, people still want to have either white motor class or a PN70 class. And we run at our local track, we run what's called a Carolina spec class. And that is a white motor on AAAs with literally unlimited upgrades. Build whatever car you want, but it can have a white motor in it. And we are actually debating whether or not allowing a PN70 might be a good add to that one, because they're very popular for all the reasons we're discussing here. But it's an unlimited build what you want. And of course, some things we can be honest about that we're talking about is we want allow people to make some upgrades, but we also want the hobby shop owners to be able to sell parts. So, you know, this box stock class isn't the one that, you know, a lot of stuff gets sold for except tires and a few things. But as you're all saying, 100%, this is the entry level. This is the place people step into 128 scale, and we want to make it super easy. Which is why I would say adding a PN70 in this class does not make it super easy, because having to shoehorn a PN70 in what the perception of being competitive, unless you put in another motor, takes it to another level right off the bat. Box stock is box stock. Along the lines of the motors, just to add another element to this, when you talk about the motors, is motor wires. So let's just say for now, it sounds like we're all close, that the white motor is kind of the way to go for this. Not 100% agreement, but we're close. What about motor wires? Do we allow box stock to change the motor wires, or do you got to run the stock motor wires? And I know we all know that they're crap, right? They're not good.
They're crap.
So again, I like trying to keep things simple for new people and approachable, but encouraging them to work on their cars. And I feel like when you're able to take a box stock, some new guy's able to buy a soldering iron, learn how to solder and swap out motor wires, pull off the resistor. I feel like that's a huge add. And there's simple, small upgrades, like even swapping out to the PN motor. It's simple for the most part. It's 2 screws, pull the motor wires out, swap your pinion, drop it in there. I haven't had any issues with it fitting in any of my motor pods.
You have to ream. You have to ream the plates, otherwise it won't fit.
Not on the LM.
Yeah, you got.
I haven't tried it on the LM.
The PN70, you have to flare all the plastic.
You got to shoehorn it in.
On the front of the motor, because it has more of a flare than the stock.
Even the old ones, even the old cans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Interesting.
have to ream it. The
Well,
side way opinion is
but regardless, I don't want to go on that tangent. That's fine. My point is though, is by allowing some upgrading is important because it gets people to get their hands dirty right off the bat with simple stuff like wire changes. That's another
agreed.
encouraging thing with the wire
But with,
changes.
but with the same gauge wire, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I would think
Because
so, yeah.
I've seen some box lock guys with like 20 gauge wire on there.
Yeah.
On there. You know what I
Well,
mean?
even just removing the resistor or whatever the yellow,
Right.
The thermal cutoff.
the thermal cutoff. Yeah. Even just having somebody be able to remove that encourages somebody to break out a soldering iron for the first time ever in their life, potentially.
Well, if you drive a box stock long enough, you're going to have to do something with that, soldering that wire back on anyway, because it's going to break.
It breaks.
At some point.
That's true. That's true. That's
So,
true. That's true.
yeah.
Because they're
always
too
break.
they're too stiff. Then they definitely break. The MR04, the motor that it had in it actually had soft wire. It felt like more of a silicone wire. I don't know if any of you guys
Yeah,
have played
mostly
with MR04
they
much.
break because they have that little clip that the wires kind of tuck
Mhm.
underneath. You
Right.
gotta take it off
And
that
the
clip because what happens?
the MR04
Yeah, it
doesn't have
pulls.
that.
Okay, because it pulls the wires when the car rotates back and forth, and that's why
Right.
the wires break.
That was
all
the
the time.
98 millimeter motor pod that had
Yeah.
a problem, but the MR04s don't have that
They
problem.
don't have it.
So, and honestly, I haven't looked at the MR04 stock wiring enough to know whether or not this is even an issue anymore, but it's a good discussion
Well,
just the same.
it's a softer wire. That's what I'm
It's
saying.
better
It's a
wire.
softer wire.
Yeah.
The wire,
So-
it's not any bigger gauge, but it's a softer wire. The MR03 motors had and I don't know if there's a new stock part or a stock number part for the MR04 motor, but
So are we going to
it's-
have very many people coming out with a brand new MR03 on the track to run box stock? How often is that going to happen?
it'll be less and less.
Yeah.
I don't know when they're officially going to make the MR03 not
So
available.
here's the
What about
question.
sorry?
Here's the question. Is there really any real performance increase from changing the wire to where somebody who knows how to do it can do it to somebody who's just got into the hobby, doesn't even know how to solder? Is there a serious advantage over somebody who can and can't?
I would say as long as what Enzo says it's the same gauge wire, it doesn't matter at that point. You know,
What does the SR27 come with? That's another question. Does that wire need to be changed? Is it garbage? You know,
I
like
think
are
it's
people?
very similar.
it looks
Yeah.
like crap. It doesn't look good from pictures that I've seen.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Brian went to
Right,
go grab his. So
And some wire companies have the insulation is a lot thicker, so it may be deceiving that you think the wire's thick or not. So you kind of have to look. Different companies
Sure.
have
Well, most
different
wire has a
insulation
label
thickness.
on it. Yeah, most of them have the gauge on the wire.
Right, the gauge on them. Right, agreed.
It's pretty
As long
as
as-
about the same as the SR27.
Oh, Brian pulled out his stuff.
yeah, I was gonna say you would go get it. Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that, but
That's
it looks
That's an MO4.
SR27.
Okay.
Okay, so can we
Yeah,
just
I-
can we just get a consensus that we're all okay changing the wire as long as it's the same gauge that was on the car?
Yep.
Like
I'm
is
cool
it
with that.
if you have to repair it, whatever, you could change the wire?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean,
The other
yeah,
thing,
because
I
especially if you
don't know
have an
if
issue like
anybody's
being
looked
able
at
to
the
find that wire.
SR27, but it's not easy to change either. You have to take the whole top of the chassis off. So
And then we actually used to require in our races in the Carolina Cup that the thermal cutoff still be attached. It is not a huge performance improvement to remove it. But again, it's that whole if you don't know how to solder, you can't do it anyway. But on the old 98 MMs, it was a point of disconnecting the wire from right there too. So it was one of those things to try and take off. I'm still okay with the way the rules are that you can remove the thermal switch if you want to. If people are running it, I don't think it's harmful. So I don't think we need to change any of that. Any other opinion?
No, it's easy to remove.
Nope.
You'll
It's
leave
fine.
leave that one alone. Okay. And then
yeah, if people want to burn their board out, they can burn their board
the
out.
rules do say that you cannot manipulate the motor in any way, shape, or form. You really can now. Brian and I have spent a lot of time with this, unfortunately, with track experience. You really can't open that can up and not be able to tell you open the can up.
Which one?
The
The
white
white
motor.
motor?
Yeah. I mean, you're
Okay.
you really. I mean,
Enzo apparently has something in his pocket.
yeah, maybe Enzo
No,
knows how to do it. Yeah.
listen, I've seen them do it. I've seen people do it in my shop. I mean,
We
I've
have
seen
to.
guys
Yeah, we have to.
blow through
Yeah,
like down
I
the
think the way to
straightaway.
phrase it is it's not impossible. It is
Right.
Well,
it is possible to do
I'm
it, but
when I talk to you
it
guys,
takes
I'll tell
somebody
you.
that's skilled at it to
But
do it.
okay, so the
So,
people who are capable of doing that shouldn't be running in box stock anyway, and they're not hard to pick out
Well,
for the
no,
crowd.
it's not. It's not even the people that are running. It's people that are selling the motors to these other people that are
Oh,
driving, right?
yeah, okay, all right.
So
That's
I'll
but
tell you once.
we
I'll
can't
tell you when
we
on a
can't help you
private.
with the Pennsylvania Mafia,
Yeah.
man. There's only so much
No,
we can
it's
do over here.
not that. Yeah, I'm telling you.
I can back Enzo up on that one. There's some guys that can take that motor apart and put it back together, and you will
Yep.
never know.
Do you know
No,
what
and
solves that? Is
well,
a
you'll
$10
know when you see it on the track.
buyback rule.
Yeah, you really can.
Well, yeah, that's the
really
only
can.
time. That's
Look,
the only time you
there's
can.
there's only one truth. There's only one truth with those motors that I think at the end of the day you can pretty much count on. That if two people are driving next to each other and one person bumps the wall, and the person who bumped the wall is back on the other person's tail inside of 2 or 3 turns, it's a modified motor. Those motors don't catch up to each other like that. So they're
Oh
really
no,
easy to pick up.
of course I agree with you, but it does happen. I mean, it did happen in my shop. I mean, I had to basically call the guys out and tell them they can't run. They got to change the motor. But
And we've had the same, but we can't not have
and I'm
rules
not.
because there's rule
Yeah,
breakers.
I'm not talking about the new shop, my old shop when I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
the
yeah.
smaller track.
Yeah.
These guys were blowing by the guys on the straight. I'm like, what's going
Yeah.
on here? So I took the car. I'm looking at these motors, and I know what they did with the motor because they told me, they confessed. And I'll tell you, I don't want to say it because then people are gonna, attempt to do it. So
Yeah, don't
I
give
don't want
everybody
to open
ideas.
up. No, I don't want to open up that
understand.
can of
Yeah.
worms. But
Yeah,
I'll when I see you guys in person, I'll tell you what they did.
It's probably the same things we've already
It's the same
experienced.
thing. It's the same things that we've seen too. Yeah, probably the same things. Okay, so the rules do say no motor manipulation, no opening the can, nothing whatsoever. It's supposed to be out of the thing. Now you can break them in. I mean, there's nothing stopping anybody from dropping it in water for 30 minutes to an hour and seeding the brushes. That's okay, but you just can't open the can. And but I know that some people do some crazy stuff even from outside the can. But
It's
no motor
amazing what
manipulation.
people do.
The good part is you can tell when something's been done to it. Okay, so next one, everybody good with still the 6 tooth to the 9 tooth? That comes in the box. So that's always been the contention. If it's in the box, it's legal. Everybody good with that?
All good.
Okay. So
What does the 27 come with?
I was just looking. You're reading my mind. I literally I have it right here.
And does
I
it
was
come
looking
with
to see what-
extra?
Yeah, it comes with 3 others. I think it's the same thing. Hold on, let me get on my I'm getting older glasses.
Well, while you're looking at that, we're going to move on to wheels and tires. So wheels, there's a rule state right now. I think are pretty good unless somebody's got another opinion. It's 8.5 and 11s, 8.5 on the front, 11s on the back. They can't stick out. You can run 20 millimeters, run up to 20 millimeter tires and as low as 19 millimeters. I actually had forgotten that the Sauber comes with 19 millimeter fronts. I was thinking taking the 19 millimeter out, but actually the fronts on the Sauber come 19 stock. So and as they're just released that one, I'm pretty sure it still has 19s in the front. And then all made for 28 scale cars, and they got to fit tucked into the body. Are we all good with those rules? Okay.
I forget. There's nothing mentioning maximum diameter on your rear tire.
Yeah,
I think it
there
does.
is. We're getting to tires. Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
we have
okay.
you have the tire gauge, right?
Yeah, it's 25.5 just to answer that question is in the rule
Yes.
set
Yes.
now.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was still
Yeah.
in there. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, pinions are 6, 7, 8, 9.
There you
Just
go.
like
Okay. Good.
Perfect.
That's awesome. Very
Great.
good.
Thanks
Question.
for looking that up.
I'm not sure. I didn't look at the rules if they had the discs. What about the discs in the front?
Discs being
Tuning discs.
wheel discs.
Tuning discs,
tuning
yeah.
discs.
You know what, Enzo? That's a great
That's a
question.
good
I
question.
hadn't even thought of that as like something that we might need to address.
Because someone asked me. I mean, look when you say box stock, again, I'd like to keep it as pure as you can, right? As far as like the parts are available. Now, someone asked me on my track, could we use a tuning disc? I'm like, no, you can't use tuning discs. Again, I think if you're a beginner, I mean, I think it's helpful, but you got to know what you're doing. Because if you go over, I mean, the car pushes like a truck, and if you go under, it causes traction roll. I mean, there's all the ways. But I don't know what your
I have
guys'
an
opinion
argument.
is.
I have an argument for this. Part of it is it's equivalent to truing your tires. You have to have the same amount of knowledge if you're going to expect new drivers to tune or to true front tires. And some of these wheels come with tuning discs that are kind of required, like the new Nex wheels. Those tuning discs are screw-on discs, like the disc screws on with a thread, and they're required to run. Like you wouldn't run those wheels without it because a single hit will destroy the wheel without the disc on it.
Okay.
So those wheels need the discs on them. Now you could put the minimal disc on there or the stock disc or whatever, but I feel like tuning discs are just as complex as truing your tires, but easier for somebody who's new because they don't need to buy a truing machine or ask somebody to do it. They can use their discs to tune their front ends. If you're and again, if you want to be hardcore box stock, then I guess we're all running Kyosho wheels.
I'm not weighing an opinion on the discs because it's an interesting thing. I hadn't thought of that. So Enzo, thanks for bringing it up.
Well, no, I was just pointing out. I'm not, I'm not trying to talk down on being a purist of the box stock form, but you got to realize what that means.
I mean, there's just
cases.
something to keep in mind as we talk about the disc for just a moment or two. These cars, they don't traction roll like all the other cars do. These are slow. If we're running white motor,
they'll traction. Oh no, they traction roll.
I didn't say they don't. Not as much. It's not as big a problem as the faster cars. It's not the same thing. So, continue.
Again, I think it comes down to what is the competitive advantage that somebody who has tuning discs has against somebody who doesn't, but can true their tires.
Right, but the thing with the truing the tires now, PN makes those low profile tires or the 8.
So is that going to be a requirement then?
Well, that's what I sell to all the box stock guys that I sell, or people that buy the cars at my shop. I right off the bat I give, because they don't have the ability. They're brand new. They don't know what truing is. They don't know what a true is. And then are they going to invest the money in a truer? So it was kind of easier when they came out with those tires. So I mean, you basically, if you want to make them true, you got to true those as well once you glue them down, because they are a little off, but they're a lot better than the taller tires.
Yeah.
And the car will be less to traction roll with those tires, correct?
Yeah, no, I agree. The low profiles are a huge benefit to new people, and we clearly recommend those every time. But again, goes back to my question. If you're against tuning, well, I'm not saying you're against, but like
I'm not against it. I'm just bringing it up.
That's what I'm saying. No. That's what I'm saying. To be against, my point is to anybody, to be against tuning discs would be equivalent to being against truing tires, in my opinion.
Okay. That's a good point.
I would say also gluing. I mean, that's another thing that you're doing just to keep it from traction rolling.
Correct. How you glue your tires. You glue your tires, glue your sidewalls.
Yeah. So, yeah, I see your point, Enzo, on that, but that's
But like I said, I'm not opposed to it, but I just, at my track, when they asked at the time, I mean, I felt, because all the guys in modified and 3500, they were using it, and I think, I didn't say it was it would be an advantage, but I just throwing it out there.
It's a great question.
That's a great question. I hadn't even thought about that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Well, we actually haven't been running box stock at our local track. We've been doing the Carolina spec that Danny mentioned. So which allows obviously for that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna say let's all ponder that one and table it just for a second, and we'll get back to it if we have a little bit more time. But let's keep talking about tires. To see if we have consensus on that. So the only class that I'm aware of that some people do run box stock and they require you to run Kyosho tires. Some people do. I know that that's part of Kyosho stock is they require Kyosho tires. As the class is right now at RM28, it is open. Run whatever tires that you want to run. And I just weigh in my opinion. Different tracks, stock different tires. I think this is something you got to leave more open to make it more open for all the tracks and for the drivers. Can't
Absolutely
lock
agree.
people into one tire or another.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I agree as well. As long as they're not silicone tires.
No silicone, right? Now,
Yeah, you got to eliminate the damaging ones, but no foam tires, stuff like that. But
right.
Under
any
it
rubber
doesn't say
RCP tire.
in the RM28, it doesn't specifically say or exclude those tires, but in the general rules right now, it does. Talk about the tires and traction compounds and all those kinds of things. That's still part of the rules. That applies to all the different classes. So
Yeah, as it should. That should apply to everything. as a general rule.
Especially for hobby shop owners. You want, again,
100%.
the availability of the Kyosho. The Kyosho is notorious, man. They don't stock anything.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a huge thing for stores to be able to sell tires. And now to play devil's advocate, being that I am an advocate for new people and barrier to entries, tires are the most intimidating and difficult thing for a new user. 100% is
what are you talking
dealing with
about, man?
tires.
I've been racing for a while, and it's still the most intimidating thing. What are you talking
Yeah,
about,
I
man?
was just thinking to say that's not just for new people. I don't
I
think
said,
that goes
let me know when
away.
that changes, because that's
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm just pointing it out because again, that's kind of my philosophy is lowering that barrier and intimidation factor for new people. So if I was going to argue against it, which I'm not, that would be my only point is that like having a spec tire per se makes it way easier for new people. But I'm not saying we should. I would not want that. I'm just saying if somebody wanted to do that,
we're all in agreement with that one. Okay, batteries.
Well, that's when it comes down to the hobby shop owner to kind of tell.
I
yes,
agree.
100%. Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Batteries. I think there's not much to discuss here. If we had time, I was going to ask if anybody's seen people using the new Nize batteries. I know that they're blowing up boards all over the place, but we
That's
don't have
mostly what I've heard.
we don't have a ton of time to really go over those. But it's either way, the batteries is covered. Still alkalines, nickel, metal hydrides, and NiCads are still the thing. Okay, electronics and transmitters. So at this for box stock, it's pretty much the KT radio, and that's pretty much it. Any other comments with that? Nope. Okay, good.
I got a question, Danny. If you do the that pro spec box stock, are you gonna allow, or we're gonna talk about allowing a different radio or still that KT radio?
So again, just a preview, but if I think there's a spec class to be had out of this to take out from the RM28 is to split these into two classes, and the spec class is pretty much gloves off, man. AAA batteries, the power, whatever power motor we decide, white motor, PN70, and gloves off for everything else.
So we can change to PN chassis.
PN 2.5, yeah.
Really?
It could be.
So isn't
that's the way we run it right now? But again,
so doesn't that make it a pro stock class?
It's still white. It's still
you
white
can't
motor.
run brushes.
It's still AAA brushed.
It's still
AAA brushed.
It's still AAA brushed.
What about electronics? What about electronics?
And
Can I
I'll
swap
just throw out there, Danny and I, obviously we've had a lot of discussion about this, and between the Carolina Mini Z Cup and our local shop and stuff like that, our local shop went to, you might as well call it pro spec or whatever, the next level beyond box stock, because, it was to help the shop too, because everybody wanted to do upgrades. And that allows everybody to do upgrades. You can still put a box stock or a box stock car in there and be relatively competitive. But everybody at our shop really just wanted to go to the Carolina spec. That's what we call it there. It's our homegrown thing, Carolina spec actually. And anyways, the thing is it allows for all that extra stuff beyond.
So I want to push way beyond. I want a 3D printed car that I can run AAAs in, that allows me to run a hobby wing ESC on my brushed motor, and a true, a Reef servo or whoever, Reflex servo, but it's AAA and it's brushed.
Well, save all that for the next discussion there, Ken.
Right.
I'll be at
box stock.
I'll be at that discussion.
All right, so we're almost done and we're almost on time. So thank you guys so much. There's been great discussion. Let's see if we can get the last couple items in here, and we're doing fantastic. So, but the body is next. Enzo had a question about the John Marima, and pretty much the rest of it is the rules pretty much read it's pretty much any hard body that fits these cars is pretty much in the rule set. So what do we got? What do we got to talk about bodies?
You heard my opinion on it.
Yeah, well,
I'd
well
like to
look,
hear everybody else.
I'm not a particular fan of the John Marima either, but man, there's a lot of them out there.
Well,
So the
because
problem-
they're
the problem
best
is-
bodies they handle.
So there's the new PN Corvette styled body, which is almost as good with the Lexan top, but
Lexan top is
Lexan top
out
shouldn't be
for
there.
box.
no,
that's not an
I'm just
option in
saying,
box
I'm just pointing out which body I'm talking about. But yeah, so then if you start cutting that out, then everything has to be an auto scale body. And then again, when you start to introduce other manufacturers like a Team Associated, what happens when they have a particular release that has a particular body that's highly advantageous, that's a Jumarama style body? Yeah.
Well,
So far,
and-
well, here's the thing.
Lexan,
It's got to
yeah.
be.
Yeah.
It's got to be a realistic car.
So I have to
That's
go
where I'm
buy a
getting at.
I have to go buy a $70 auto scale body to race.
It's not 70. It's $50.
You could buy a silver horse.
Well, how much is the Jim Rama
But
body?
that's not
It's
auto
40
scale.
bucks.
But that's not auto
It's-
scale.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not.
No, he said the silver horse body.
Oh, I didn't.
So again,
It's a real car though.
But didn't when you purchase your box stock, it came with a body? Why are we talking about? I
Well,
guess
they
I'm
break.
about saying to buy another
Well,
body.
they break all the
Oh,
time.
well, I mean, people want to change bodies, man. So
yeah, you can't
Well,
let
They
people.
want to paint. They want to paint their own bodies.
Yeah,
Right.
Hey,
people
the
have to be
thing
able to
with-
change bodies.
So,
Well, for
so
the
thing with-
SR27, you have to get a body because it comes with Lexan.
it comes with Lexan.
Yeah, so it's not a hard body. It will take a hard body because it'll actually take the same clips and stuff and everything for a Kyosho. But you have to get one. So that right there is like, okay, well, what do they get? Do they get the I call it the Jumanji, but the John Marima, or do they get the whatever? Yeah,
So you
That's what I
can't
call it.
exclude.
Still
You
can't,
can't
so.
exclude. You can't exclude one aftermarket body without excluding them all. Is the only
Well,
problem.
well, it's not the aftermarket body. It's just a realistic body. Because the Giorama body is not a realistic body.
It looks like a car to me.
I mean,
I think it's a weight
I mean-
thing. I mean,
It
it
is a
is
weight
very
distribution.
light compared to everything else out there. Is it not? I mean,
It
The,
is.
tw-
No,
the
it's one of
12C
the lighter
body is
bodies.
probably one of the lightest bodies that you can get.
Yeah, the new PN body is probably
Well,
definitely.
that
I
has
mean,
the
no, the
Lexan roof.
McLaren 12C body.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well,
You're right.
I would say
Except it
the
breaks
John Marino
constantly.
looked much less like a real car. But have you all seen the Tesla Cybertruck lately?
It doesn't look like a real car.
It doesn't look like a real car, but that's a real
But
car.
it is a real car. People are driving it.
I mean, other
if
than
there's
so
a-
what-
if
truck
there's-
so, but then are you talking-
pretty looks just like
hold
it.
on,
so-
hold on. But that's subject. So you can't hold on. Hold on. As a rules designer, you cannot have something subjective like that. You can't say it's got to look like a real car. It's so you have to have
No,
a
I'm saying
binary.
it does look like a real car.
Well,
No,
It's
I'm
actually-
telling
there's a real
Enzo.
car. It looks just like it on the
Yeah,
road.
No,
My argument to
hear ya.
Enzo is you
Well,
have like
here-
does it
here-
have to be licensed? Does it have to be a licensed car?
No, it doesn't have to be a licensed car, but it has to be a GT car, right?
What defines that? Now you have to define what a GT car is to the
Well-
specifics.
GT used to
Well,
reference
GT
98.
Well, the GT cars that they race, the realistic racing. So the Giorama
So I can't
body
run.
and-
So I can't run my
Well, I'm not saying
civilian
you can't.
Corvette. Well, hold on.
Okay, so
my
hang on.
civilian Corvette body that
So
came
hold
on
on,
my
hold
Kyosho?
on. So is there any real advantage to running a John Marima over any other car?
Yes.
There
There
is.
is, yes.
Okay. What's the
Even-
advantage?
Can you run the John Marina with an LM or no?
No.
No, it's
No,
98.
it's
I-
a 98.
Yeah, you'd have to really trim.
So if you have an LM running a regular LM body versus the Jumanji body, I like to call that also, Brian.
Jumanji.
Thank you.
Jumanji.
That's
Thank you.
funny. That's
Because
funny.
it's going to stick.
Yeah.
Is it any better then?
So one of the huge benefits of the Jumanji body.
I'm not trying to say
Yeah,
Enzo,
no.
I'm not trying to
One
argue
of
with
the
you. I'm
big
just wondering.
benefits.
That's all.
One of the big benefits is that it's lighter, right? It is lighter, and the shape of the body overall, weight distribution wise, is very good. And when you hit a wall with it, because of the angles of the front bumper on that car, you don't tuck under the walls as easily, and you just kind of glance off of any wall you hit.
Mm.
Whereas any of the auto scale bodies, especially if you not allowed to modify them, they've got the air spoilers, front dams, all that stuff, and it all gets caught under or causes you to spin out if you just barely touch the wall, including the LMs. So it's more of a reaction to how it handles when you hit a wall for a new person. The Jumeirah body is the best handling, generally speaking, for a new person because of that alone. Plus the weight, like I said, the weight. So there are advantages to it, but I think it just encourages manufacturers to make better bodies, more options that are equivalent to performance and handling. Right? It should encourage those guys to make some better bodies. Because I just want to put out there, I love auto scale. I would be all for a straight up auto scale class. But it's got to be true auto scale. But again, no new guy wants that. No new guy wants that.
Let's see if we can all agree. Let's see if we can all agree to this so we can move off the bodies. This class has to be generic for around the world.
Yep.
Do we really think we're gonna be able to eliminate one body off this list?
No.
No. So,
or Enzo, do you have an idea as to what you were thinking, how to handle that?
No, I mean, listen, if guys like it, then that's fine. I mean,
yeah.
I'm just tired of seeing that body in every single class. You know what I mean?
agree.
It's in box stock. It's in AAA. It's in 2500. Yeah, it's all over the place. It's just trying to keep it different. Trying to keep the box stock different than all the other classes. You know what I mean?
It's a worthwhile goal, Enzo. No doubt about it.
Yeah, but I get what Ken's saying. I mean, I'm not going to argue that.
I'm tired of seeing it too, brother.
If you sell 20 of them a week at your shop, you'll be perfectly fine. All right.
No, not really. I do sell a lot of them, but it's just
I know. I'm just messing with you. I'm the
listen,
same way. I haven't liked the Jumanji since honestly since it came out.
All right, so moving on then. The
auto scale with lights.
Last couple items we got. So the optional parts on the RM spec class allows them to change bearings, nuts, screws, springs, add shims, and T-plates.
Yep.
It also
I think
allows them.
I think that gets into what was said earlier about learning to work on your car. I mean, you got to have. I know that there's been some shops that I've been to and stuff like that. They don't allow anything changed. You can't change a T-plate. You can't change front springs.
Nothing.
You can't change anything. And honestly, honestly, tires, they're 90% of what your car is, but you need to be able to learn to tune a little bit. Put a T-plate on there, put some front springs on. Learn what the car does with those different dynamics. So
on the bearings, no ceramics, right?
No ceramics. How would you be able to tell?
You can't.
I'm just
How do you
saying.
check it?
You can't.
Yeah,
that's
the other thing that we've had with Carolina Mini Z Cup is, how do you tech certain things? So, stuff like that.
I'm fine with it. I'm just,
Well, Enzo, I feel like that falls under the same thing I said earlier about it being like a 2% increase in performance, 3% increase in performance.
Yeah, that's fine.
Compared to a new person's skill ability, the skill set
I just questioned. That's all. I mean,
if there was a way to easily tell, if there was an easy way to tell, I'd be all for saying no ceramics, but it's not easy.
So I know we're getting close. I know we're getting close on time. So let me throw a curveball into this. And since we're talking about like upgrades in box stock, can you put an LM pod on a 98?
You have to be able to, because if you can buy the LM car, what's the difference?
Yeah, that's the same thing.
I agree. I agree.
It's the same thing, except it's got the damper. That's you're basically
The damper won't fit on a 98.
Right. You have to make it a 102.
Right.
No. You can take an LM pod and you can put it in a 98 millimeter configuration, but you won't be able to run the friction plate.
And that kind of defeats the purpose, in my opinion.
I mean, they're all stock parts, so I think
they're all stock. They're all stock parts.
That's what Danny's getting at. Is if you buy a box stock LM and an MM, and you can combine parts and and put that low slung pod on there. Honestly, I think introducing the MR04, that pretty much becomes a moot point because you basically have that configuration in the MR04 already.
Right. They've already built it in. Right. I just like I said, just ask that question.
Great question, because
it's on recording, right? It's on the recording. So you can, if it's part of those stock part set, you can use it. Adding weights, any issues with that? Anybody?
No,
No. Okay.
probably not. No.
Tungsten weights, whatever, is all good. And then lastly,
So can
Does
you
it- wait,
use an
hold on, does that
aftermarket
include-
disc damper?
Go ahead.
What was that,
Lee.
Lee?
So
Sorry.
does that mean you can use an aftermarket disc damper?
No.
Because
No.
you can,
no.
No,
I mean, I
because
would
why?
imagine
What-
no.
Well,
If you're
the
asking
second
everybody
line
else.
in the original rules was any manufacturer's T-plate mount, steering knuckles, disc dampener set,
So
center shock.
I
Well,
thought the SRA had you can put an aftermarket disc dampener in it.
yeah, that's what I thought too.
Oh,
It
did
does.
That's
Did it?
yeah.
It does.
Sorry, I don't
Yeah.
have the rules in front of me. Did it say that?
Yep.
It does.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Which is
okay, my
which
bad.
is why the LMs are, in part the justification for allowing them to be in the same class is like you can basically put that same rear end, it's aftermarket, but the same rear end on the
Well,
98.
with this, you
I'm-
could put
I'm
a
sorry,
PM.
I'm
disc
sorry.
dampener
I'm
on.
reading from my other notes. So as it reads right now, thanks for saying that, Lee. Any manufacturer's T-plate, steering knuckles, disc dampener set, center shock, and front body mount with body adapter is allowed. That's
Yeah.
the current rules.
Mm.
So yes, a 98 can run an aftermarket Nex Racing or PN disc dampener.
Oh, PN disc damper. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, because they were the last race we had. They were running it, and guys were like, oh, they're running illegal cars. They're running aftermarket disc damper. I was like, well, I said it's allowed in the SRA. So when I looked at the rules, and then when Lee mentioned it, so it is.
Yeah, when
So
we
you
were
guys
up
wanna
there,
keep-
a couple of guys had said something, and I actually did the same thing. And so I pulled up the rules, and I was like, "Really?" Because
Yeah.
it's been so long since I've run box stock or
Right.
that class.
And then the
I
rest
wasn't sure.
and then the rest of the paragraph reads, just to have it on tape here. Only those 5 above listed items can be upgraded. No aftermarket front suspensions or rear pods allowed. Adding weight via tungsten putty, stick weight, or cut hobby brass is allowed. So that's the rest of the thing. So those are the performance items you had. Like you guys talked about steering knuckles before. I'm okay either way, but I do think it's a good. Yeah, I think it's a good upgrade to offer that offers no performance increase, but they're more available.
As long as they're 0 degrees.
Zero
Yeah,
degree. You know
it's
what?
gotta
You know
be
what?
stock
Thanks
spec.
again for
It's gotta
saying
be-
that again.
I would call
Uh,
it stock spec. It's got to be manufacturer spec replacement parts. So same degree of angles and caster and camber and all the stuff needs to be the same as
Thanks for
stock.
saying that again,
What-
because I
so-
added
so-
that. I'll add that in the notes.
So basically, the load down knuckles would be illegal then.
If they're not the same as stock spec, I would think they would be.
Yeah, no, they got to be the same spec as stock, right?
What are you saying? The low down, the ones that are
PM makes a low down knuckles.
Yeah, you talking about the
that,
ones that take the 3mm bearings?
Yep.
Yeah, I guess the only thing there is MRO4 comes with 3mm bearings, flip kingpins.
So it's the same thing.
Well, you can't take that and put it on an MRO3.
Okay.
So,
Are the low
but
down
I guess
knuckles really gonna
it
make
also
that
goes
much
back to the
difference?
tech. How do you tech that?
Oh.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Lee?
Are the low down knuckles really going to make that much difference? I don't think so.
I mean, we were allowing them because they were 0 degrees. I mean, they were just an upgrade that was available, so that's what we allowed in the past. So
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, especially for the new guy, like Lee makes a good point. Like for newbies, is it going to make a huge difference? I don't think so.
Probably not.
Yeah.
All right. And the last thing we got on the list.
Hold on, before you move on, weight. You
Okay.
mentioned adding weight. That applies to being able to remove weight to a certain point, right?
Is there a weight
Gonna be
limit
a
to this
certain-
class?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
there
think
is.
there is a minimum weight limit, so that would probably just fall within the minimum weight.
Right,
There
okay.
is not a current minimum weight that I'm.
Is it
There
under? I
isn't.
think it's under the general rule.
Oh, it is.
Sorry, I should have pulled it up. I didn't pull
Yeah,
it
I
up.
don't
I don't
remember,
think
but
I've
I feel
seen
like
it.
I feel like there definitely needs to be.
I was prepared. I have the rules in front of me also.
We've seen some guys take even box stock bodies like the Kyosho bodies and Dremel the hell out of them until they're paper thin and reinforced
No
to certain spots.
modifications.
Yeah. Well, again,
I thought there was some info underneath the general guidelines for body modifications as well.
Yeah, there's no weight listed specifically for the RM28 class. The weights
Not in box stock.
start at stock, but I guess
What does
maybe
it say about
it says
modifying-
stock, but maybe you could call that the RM28.
So So did anybody ever
160
weigh a
grams.
box? Anybody weigh a box stock out of the box? See what it weighs?
It's going to depend totally on the body or the LM versus, 98
Well, it's just
versus
an average. I mean, yeah, I get you.
Hey, Danny, actually in the under the weight and stuff, it's listed as stock. I think
Well, that's what
think
I'm
that
saying. It says stock.
goes for any stock class.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Yeah, the
AAA
one-
stock, LiPo stock, and box stock.
So 160?
Is what that weight limit is.
160,
It's 160 grams. I don't think you're going to get a AAA car under 160 grams.
No.
Yeah.
Now with the AAA batteries, yeah.
Okay, so but what that means is I can totally hollow out my body and I can
I mean,
add,
yeah, you're going to duct tape some batteries and
Well,
electronics
no,
and
no, because
wheels
under the
together.
body rules,
It
the
says
body
no
rules,
body mod.
the body
But
rules are
anyway.
very specific about hollowing out your body. So
okay, what
Can't
about
do that.
my rear pod, drilling a bunch of holes in my rear pod to lighten that up, and my chassis, and
It says right in the rules, Danny, that the body material may not be shaved or thinned
correct.
okay.
for weight
Does
reduction.
that
Yeah.
apply to chassis? Does that apply to chassis?
Well, well, let me know after I step on it.
This is the problem with stock racing is this whole conversation. Like, where do you draw the line? This is box stock.
Right.
Yeah,
It's all.
Like, who's going to
just
shave
take-
material off the chassis?
people
I
do.
agree with Lee. Why can't people just take the car out of the box and put it on the track? Why they got to manipulate everything?
Well, so again,
So that's
it's got to be
human nature.
binary.
They don't do
Then.
that.
Yeah, I
Well,
know
so-
it is. That's racing.
You know what?
So,
Ralph has the idea. I quit. I'm going to slot cars.
There you go.
I see him.
Well,
He's
I'm
running
sure-
on the track
I'm sure-
right there.
I'm sure they bend the rules in
his
that
probably
too.
are drilled out. He's cheating right now. I could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we got to remember we're talking about box stock with the stock transmitter, right?
Exactly.
If somebody's gonna
Exactly.
take the time to drill out a chassis, they're
Exactly.
probably not running box stock. They're running a
Exactly.
different class, and they don't want to use the kit
Well,
transmitter.
I kind of understand where Ken's coming from. I mean, you need to have that in the rules because you're going to have somebody that's going to do that.
Yes,
Movie or
100%.
not, it happens.
100%.
It has to be
it will happen.
It has to be transparent. Otherwise,
and I
you know.
agree. Like, why can't people just follow it's called the spirit of the rules, right? Like, you want people to be able to follow the spirit of the rules, but
I think
they're
it's
not going
I think
to.
it's super easy to add in the midst of here. I don't know exactly what place to put it in, but I think it's super easy to add along with the other ones. No manipulation to the chassis.
Sure.
You can put that right in the
Done.
chassis.
Again,
Yeah.
my point is just
Chassis
it's got to
section.
be listed at some point, or people are going to do it.
Right.
Yep.
And Jason, to your point, like 95% or maybe even 99% of people are not going to touch that stuff. But
Right. Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're always going to have that one guy,
the thing is,
that's going to bend the rules.
you put
But
in the
we all know
rules
who
and you're
that
actually
one
give
guy
them
is,
ideas.
right?
They're like, oh, what could I do? All right. All right. So hey,
Oh,
we're really
yeah.
close. Last one, kingpin flips.
I mean, yeah, it should be allowed.
Yeah.
The new MRO4 has
Yeah,
it.
man. Fine.
MRO4 already comes with it. So
Totally
I say
agree.
yeah.
Totally agree.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So as the rule states, kingpin flip is allowed as long as you cut the pin, it doesn't hang down, so you don't damage the track.
Yep.
We're all good with that. Okay, that stays as it is. Well, I think we've successfully created a box stock class, guys. Yeah, fantastic. That was a good exercise, and we were not that far past the 8 o'clock. So you guys did fantastic getting this done. Any other comments to go along with that? Anything we missed along the way? Now's a good time to throw in. No, all good.
I was a little late, so what I took out of this was they're going to have the RM spec class and a box stock class, correct? No.
No, so RM
Okay.
spec class is going away.
Oh, okay.
We're the first step is replacing it with a box stock, and in the next step will be is creating another class that will be more open than the box stock class.
Okay.
Right. So
I
similar.
think part of it's also a name change, right? Like getting rid of.
It's a name change, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Along the way,
A name change.
especially box stock. We really needed the box stock name change because that's more traditional. Most tracks are familiar with box stock now. They know what that is, right? So having one that's along those lines is, I think, what's important. So
I have a quick question. Doesn't just the AAA stock cover the next step?
Well, and like
No.
you said earlier, Danny,
Because
too,
we can't
this
we can't
turns into
afford
a
to add
catalog.
more classes to the race programs as it is already. The days are long and
So
How
I know
many,
I know you
how
joined
many
a little.
spec
I know you
classes
joined.
are we gonna
I know you
have?
joined a little bit lately, but it's a good question. So let me answer that two-parter. One is that there's still demand out there for brushed classes. So we want to have we want to have that available, but the SRA is not creating race programs. We're creating a catalog of classes. So these are classes to be used by people, but not necessarily saying we're going to run all these. Like box stock. Box stock not going to be run at every race. It may not be run at any of the Grand Prix, as a matter of fact, but it's a race that's available. So we're just defining different classes to run, not creating classes that'll be
So,
run at all
so
the events.
before you guys got into this, we ran brushed and brushless
Mhm.
in that AAA stock class.
Mhm.
Right.
And it's not, I mean, when you're running a PN70 turn motor, as long as there's a certain level of open gearing, which there is in that class, right? Or is that fixed gearing?
It's looks fixed right now in
So
Rocky
at
in
some point, you may
SRA.
want to just look into opening up the gearing in that AAA stock class, and you can run brushed or brushless 3500.
I
Because
think
really,
that's a good idea. But I think that's a conversation for when they
So
go
it
into
doesn't
that
water
expert class.
down and make more classes like
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so hold on though. I think Danny's point is we can have 15 classes. It doesn't really matter as long as the classes make sense because clubs will pick and choose the classes they want. We already have F1, we have all-wheel drive. What about an all-wheel drive super stock or the 3500 all-wheel drive versus a mod all-wheel drive? Like all these classes can have rules made for them, but it doesn't mean your club needs to run those classes. And I think that's Danny's point.
Yep. Yeah, we're not, and we don't, and it's not a matter of watering them down. It's about just picking the one off the shelf that you like to run because
So let me,
every track owner is going to be different.
no, I understand that, but isn't the point trying to get most of the tracks to have the same thing so when people travel, they're kind of running the same rules and classes?
Kind of,
I mean,
Enzo, but no,
I kind of get,
actually, no. We're not trying to get
okay,
everybody to run the same classes. What we're trying to do is define the class. So if you want to run AAA, well, a bad example, just pick. I'm going to pick something that's off the wall. Euro truck. I love my Euro truck. If I want to go somewhere and they're running Euro trucks, I want to be able to look up exactly what that class is because they're an SRA track and I know exactly how to show up with my truck. If I want to run
okay.
AAA stock and you're running SRA, Enzo, I know that I can make my car legal before I get there because I know exactly what that means. That's
Or it
the
already
idea.
is if your track is running that as well.
Right. Right.
Because I think part of the issue is that there are so many different classes that are potential that you want to have the rule set be able to cover them. As long as you have class separation, you're good. You know, you're not defining what classes are ran. You're just defining the rules for the classes
So here's
that could be run.
And all the tracks are not created equal to where some are large and
there
they
you
like
go.
running and
Exactly.
some are
Oh
small.
yeah.
Like the
Exactly. Yes.
2500 is perfect on a small track.
Right.
3500 is way better on a larger track,
Right.
for a super stock.
I was just
And so
saying, Bill,
having those two different rules.
thanks for making that point. Because I was just going to say F1 for an example. F1 2500 is my favorite class by a long shot. Some people want to run a 3500 like a pro F1 class. So let's just say Enzo, he's got a big track. He's going to run a pro F1. Well, then all I got to do is go to the rule set on the 28 SRA website, and I can look exactly what those rules are for that class, and I can show up with a car ready to go.
Gotcha.
That's the whole point.
Okay.
Yep.
so it's basically a class
Catalog.
Catalog.
Yeah,
Catalog.
yeah, class catalog.
And when the SRA runs a Grand Prix, we're using the rule sets, the classes straight off the catalog. And when a track owner runs his track, we're hoping that they run as many SRA classes as possible, so that makes it easy for people to come and go from the track. But there's nothing stopping him from running a club class. That's completely off the reservation. They can run whatever crazy class they want, but then don't call it SRA, right? You let people know these are all within the rules, and this one is not.
So in the Grand Prix, is there a minimum class limit?
You mean like how many classes will run?
Well, yeah, let's say, in certain shops don't want to run 15 classes. Is there a minimum of classes that we can run?
I think time dictates what you can run, right? If it's a 1 day event, you're limited on time.
Right. Obviously, you're going to go with the most popular classes,
Right.
but
And that's what
I
the
just
Grand Prix would be, right? Is really what the popular classes are. You wouldn't do
Right.
all of them.
Right.
no, of course not.
No, we're gonna
But
make anybody in Pennsylvania has to run only go-karts.
Yeah,
Mario
Oh, I
Kart.
love
That's-
go-karts. I
but
love
Just
go-karts.
Mario Karts.
And Euro
that's where
trucks with
Lee-
trailers.
That's where Lee was bringing up that point about, adding more classes, that it was going to make longer days and just,
Yeah.
at
No,
some
no.
point it
Our
gets to be
local
too
shop
much.
our local shop will be a pure 28 SRA, but we barely run 2 classes on a Friday night because we don't have time.
Yeah.
So if we can squeeze in a little bit of a third class, we will.
Right.
But there's just not enough time to do it with our
Gotcha.
limit.
Yeah, we actually alternate. So like 1 week we'll do F1, the next week we'll do all-wheel drive.
Yeah, we
for
do
the
that. Yeah, we
outliners.
do that, but it's still it's for us it's limited. We do like a first and third Friday of the month and a second and fourth Friday of the month and stuff. So we try to alternate them.
All right. Any other last questions, comments? Well, I just want to say for our first time out in handling this kind of like out in the open discussion, that was fantastic. I think I could not have asked for a better panel, and I don't think I could have asked for better results. I think we went through this in a pretty good format. I got some great opinions. We had some great discussion, and I think this is a good example of how we can continue going through all these different rules. So 1 down and about 30 to go.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. All right.
No,
Thank
it's
you all
good.
very much. Have a great week, everybody.
Yep, it was nice meeting
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you. You
Thank
guys
you.
too. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, guys.
We'll see
All
you.
right. Take
Thank
care.
you very much.
Bye.